Hi, this is Mrs. Weethy. Today's lesson is on energy and the ionic bond. It's a pretty short one. Formation of an ionic bond is always an exothermic process, which means that energy is going to be released. And why is that? Well, the formation of positive ions is endothermic. And when we think about it, we learned last chapter or last unit about ionization energy. And ionization energy is that energy that's required to remove an electron. So when you remove an electron, you get a positive ion. So you have to take in energy to remove the electron to form those positive ions. That's an endothermic process. In the formation of negative ions, that's exothermic. Well, negative ions, you're gaining electrons, and electrons is like a little bundle of energy. And by law of conservation of energy, a system has to remain constant in the amount of energy. So if you take in an electron that has energy, then energy is going to be released. That's an exothermic process. Overall, when you have the attraction of the positive and negative ions coming together, that is generally an exothermic process. So the whole process in general is exothermic, releasing energy. Now, once you have an ionic bond formed, then it takes a great deal of energy in order to separate the ions, and that is what is called lattice energy. The energy required to separate the ions in an ionic bond, dependent upon two things. One is the size of the ion. So the smaller the ions, the greater the lattice energy, because when those ions are so small, you have very little distance between the positive and negative ions, and so that makes a much stronger attraction. So it needs more energy to break those or separate those ions apart. The second is the size of the charge. The greater the charge, the greater the lattice energy. So the greater the lattice energy, the stronger the ionic bond, and that is the end of lesson 4. This is Mrs. Weethy. Goodbye for now.